Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is John Mark, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. Reflecting on tonight's topic, I recalled that years ago, I went through a crisis of faith. I was questioning everything about the way I was brought up, and there were heaps of doubt to go around for the traditional concept of God that I was raised with. To quote Me Without You, before my doubting eyes, the infinite appears and sighs. The unquestionable is questioned, but makes no reply. It was Paul Tillich who encouraged me during this time. Reading Dynamics of Faith, I believe he correctly states that doubt is a necessary element of faith, because faith for Tillich was the state of having an ultimate concern, and the God of that faith is the object of one's ultimate concern. Now, for our Abrahamic brothers and sisters, for many of them, the God of Abraham, known by many different names and understood differently through various traditions, very well could be the object of faith. For the nationalist, the country they represent is the object of faith. For the humanist, the well-being and flourishing of human beings may be the object of faith. And I would argue that all of these different groups experience a sort of a religion, either explicitly or implicitly. And in many ways, I feel like our UU tradition embodies the appreciation of our individual faiths while being united under a greater faith. We see this laid out in each of our principles that I believe culminate in the full embodiment of the seventh, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So while we gather and worship today, I encourage all of us to lean into our gods, the object of whatever concerns us ultimately, be they explicitly religious or secular. And may we be called to live a life of worship, which we beautifully understand this tradition to mean worth shaping. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Let our chalice be a beacon to all who are out there right now, feeling the twin flames of hope and despair, love for others and grief in their suffering, righteous anger at injustice, and the deep longing for a place to belong. Let us together rekindle the flame in our hearts that burns and yearns for justice. While our paths may be separate and over different terrain, let them be guided by the same stars, a light of love, hope, and justice, calling us home. Come, let us worship together.
Loose A reading from Primal Reverence by Reverend Kendall Gibbons. The situations are so familiar that they are pretty much cliches. You stand at the shore with the waves beating out their rhythmic crash, and the water rushing almost to your feet, seeing nothing but a thin line of horizon where sea and sky meet. The distances suggest infinity, the ocean's unfathomable depth and power, its ceaseless primordial force and mystery. The air, too, moves in a huge current, and the soaring gulls catch light on the back of their wings. Something within us unlatches and expands, in that immensity, catching some hint of our finitude, the oneness of all life emerging from the sea's embrace eons ago, the sovereign beauty and freedom of so much overwhelming space and light and sound. Somewhere this planet has a showstopper for you that takes your breath away and makes you tug on other people's sleeves to make them see what you see. The whirling autumn leaves with their wedding song of death and beauty, the heartbreaking call of the loon or the wolf or the whale, the nuzzling of newborn creatures after the labor of birth, or the struggle of the monarch out of the chrysalis into unfamiliar wings. For me, it is waterfalls. I could stand all day dumbstruck by the vision of such endless abundance, the living energy of creation poured out unceasingly before my eyes, seeming to promise a truth that something in the world, and therefore something in me, is never and can never be exhausted. It makes me want to weep, want to dance, want to fall on my knees and be one with whatever that is, in everlasting praise.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Shalansky, and my pronouns are she and her. I knew that I believed in God from a young age, but I never understood why. My parents tried their best to raise a culturally Jewish non-believer, and yet here I stand in my third year of seminary, identifying as a Jewish UU theist, speaking to you from our chapel's pulpit. While seminary is an expert partner at flipping around everything you thought you believed, this nagging connection to God has somehow persevered. From a surprisingly young age, I found myself humbled by a belief in something beyond what I could see. In the wake of my grandfather's death when I was 7, I began to pray to him nightly. He felt like a conversation partner, like he was looking down on me and was someone I could bring my questions and fears to. At some point that I no longer remember, my prayers to my grandfather shifted to prayers to God, who I was taught not to believe in. Prayer was something that fed my life. I found myself praying for safety when things felt dangerous, and would whisper prayers of gratitude for being in the right place at the right time when witnessing a moment of the absolute splendor of nature. I couldn't intellectually explain my faith, but I knew deep within how it felt in my body. You may be wondering today, why is she sharing this? Where does faith fit in Unitarian Universalism? The common misconception about Unitarian Universalism is that we can believe whatever we want. Others argue that by virtue of us being a creedless tradition, we are actually a faithless one as well. James Luther Adams has been called the most influential 20th century Unitarian theologian. He was our modern theologian, the brilliant man who bridged the antiquated time of our revolutionary era Unitarianism with the mid-20th century, eventually leading us to the theology fundamental to our tradition at the time of the 1961 merger of Unitarianism and Universalism. In his essay, A Faith for the Free, James Luther Adams argued that there is no such thing as faithlessness, that to be human is to have faith. In the eyes of Adams, the question facing us as humans is not whether or not to be a person of faith, but rather in what should one have faith? For Adams, faith did not inherently involve God, and it was not intrinsically moral. Writing in the year after World War II ended, Adams had witnessed the results of people being swayed by a faith in nationalism and militarism. Adams believed that one's faith could be determined by what a person focused on, or in his own words, by what they loved, served, sacrificed for, tolerated, and fought against. As faith could be directed towards good or bad, humans had the responsibility to live with a good faith. The most important aspect of what Adams called a free faith was one's responsibility to understand and analyze one's personal beliefs. In his most famous quote, quoted often by our very own Dr. Wheeler, Adams shared that, quote, "an unexamined faith is not worth having." While many concepts of faithfulness involve the assumed reality of God, this does not need to be the case. My life experiences have granted me a belief in God, but I truly believe that in a different lifetime, my inherent faith could have been just as easily grounded in natural phenomena, in an awe of nature rather than the spirit. As Reverend Kendall Gibbons stated in her 2012 essay, Primal Reverence, quote, "The primal experience of reverence in and for the natural world precedes theology of any variety. It is an organic human experience that requires no supernatural explanations." For Reverend Gibbons, the purest demonstration of faith was the act of reverence. One could be reverent towards nature or moved into reverence from heroic stories of selfless acts. As we just heard, Gibbons wrote about the humility she felt standing at a waterfall, of gazing at its immense power and unbelievable beauty. As she said, the waterfalls, quote, "make me want to weep, want to dance, want to fall on my knees and be one with whatever that is in everlasting praise." So in considering Reverend Gibbons' moments of primal reverence, I wonder today, what are the moments in life that took your breath away? What experiences have you had that moved beyond words, that transcended the explainable? How does it feel to sit with these memories now? We can all find benefit in giving into the mystery and wonder of life. Theist, non, or somewhere in between, the most powerful moments in our lives might be the most difficult to explain. Over 16 years ago, I was searching to figure out my place in this world, my purpose, my reason for being. In a moment of unprecedented clarity, I felt myself called into a life of service. At this time, my childhood prayer practice was starting to wane, and I was no longer sure what I believed. 1 week later, at the tail end of a 12-and-a-half-hour drive home from college, I lost focus and began to 360 across the New York State Thruway. Somehow, unlike the previous 570 miles of my journey, There were no other cars in my immediate vicinity. When all was said and done, I'd hit both the left and right guardrails of this 4-lane highway, shattered the windows of my car, and deposited my rear bumper about a half-mile back from where I skidded to a stop on the left shoulder. Other concerned drivers pulled off, 911 was called, and I shakily left my smoking car. That night was a blur of emotions and adrenaline, but somehow as the police and my parents arrived, I knew I was okay enough to decline their offer for an ambulance. The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom, the same place where I had first fallen into prayer, and I was struck by a thought. I realized I had emerged from my totaled car without even a scratch or a bruise on my body. For reasons I could not understand and that I still struggle to fully comprehend all these years later, it was completely clear to me, without a doubt in my mind, that I had been spared. Not only that, but that all of the other drivers on the road with me were kept safe as well. My waning childhood faith in God came roaring back like a tidal wave. My questions over my life's purpose just a week before started to come into a new focus. I felt I had been given a second chance at life, and my belief in something unexplainable started to be transcribed onto my heart. This is my story, but it is just one of millions of stories of a discovery of what exactly one's faith is pointing to. For me, faith in a higher power and a desire to serve others has been the driving force in my life. For Reverend Gibbons, her faith became reverence in the natural world, and it gives her grounding and purpose. What could change if you consider the natural moments that take your breath away as a moment of praise? As Unitarian Universalists, we need not be afraid to be people of faith. It is not necessary to believe in God or any higher power in order to have faith. I truly believe that connecting to these moments of personal faith, whether it be through the divine or through nature, or through the face of an infant who just learned how to smile, will only make our tradition stronger. As Adam said, it is not possible to have a faithless life, just a life lived with an unexamined faith. So I ask you today, what is your faith? What do you love, serve, and sacrifice for? What do you tolerate? What do you fight against? As you think of these driving forces in your life, how does it feel to consider them as elements of faith? Amen, and blessed be.
This song is addressed to little child, and I want to invite you to imagine this song addressed to you. Because if we really think about it in terms of the history of existence, isn't it true that really the oldest among us are still little children? ever think of God? Do you ever wonder where your life comes from? What does God feel like to you? Does she cause you to look inward or beyond your point of view? Is she burning in your chest or like trying something new? You've got your whole life to think it over. So don't you worry, little child. It's gonna be okay. Although time keeps on slipping away, let me tell you something, it's a brand new day. So don't you worry, little child, it's gonna be okay. What you don't. Do the questions with no answers make you feel all alone? Does the dark make you afraid? Do the monsters in your closet keep you awake? When the questions feel heavy or when the dark is closing in, always hold my hand. So don't you worry, little child, it's gonna be okay. Although time keeps on slipping away, when you feel fearful, hold my hand and say, don't you worry, little child, it's gonna be okay. All life begins and all life ends. The truth is, one day we will all lose a friend. From ash to ash and dust to dust. It's hard to think about the end, but oh, we must. 'Cause looking at the end gives us cause to live today. Every end is a beginning, so don't you worry, little child, it's gonna be okay. Although time keeps on slipping away, when you reach the end, may you hear a voice say, don't you worry, little child, it's gonna be okay.
All that is holy and loving and wise, as we leave chapel today, help us carry a spaciousness of spirit, awakening us to the many ways of faith, honoring our difference and our connection, making room for this moment, the one we are in together, so we may be of service, so it may shape our story.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our worship is over. May our service begin. Amen.
so much. Thank you, everyone, so much for this beautiful and wonderful chapel. Thank you for being here with us. It's good to be back here in the space. Next week, we'll have Reverend Dr. Jessica Chapin-Lape lead us in a Black History Chapel. So get ready. It's going to be magical. And please come back. Y'all have a good day. Blessed be.